from the east will take the 25th Street exit off of US Route 22. There will be no direct access to the site from the 13th Street exit going east. Staff has some concern that tractor trailers may utilize North 13th Street and Bushkill Drive within the city to gain access to the site. The zoning administrator has determined no variances are required with this application. Also, the city has had preliminary discussions with the developer about potentially leasing a portion of the property for the construction of a bicycle park, which the city has conceptually designed with the assistance of a consultant and the Hearst employees. The developer did indicate they were open to the lease at no cost provided it did not adversely affect the proposed development. The proposed warehouse building is a permitted use within the adaptive reuse zoning district. This proposal is appropriate for this location considering the site was previously used for industrial purposes. The proposed use is generally consistent with the comprehensive plan and city codes. Therefore, the submitted plans titled Easton Commerce Park appear complete enough to support the conditional final approval with conditional final plan approval with conditions.
Applicant here. Good evening. My name is Donald Hawes. I'm with Ocean Engineering, the civil engineer for this project. With me is Andrew Terrell. He is with Skinnell Properties, the applicant and developer for this project. Carl did a wonderful job summarizing everything on this. Primarily, most of the projects in Wilson Borough. We've angled the building to keep development out of Palmer Township with the adjacent Hackett Park there. There has been ongoing discussions with Palmer Township and the city of Easton for that portion of the property that's still within Palmer Township to be utilized as a bike park, as Carl mentioned. There's a lot going on with this project, and we know big warehouses, they can be intimidating. What this project brings is a large developer that can come in and help clean up the site. Because we know in the past there's been a lot of environmental concerns on the site, there's been contamination on the site. What this project will do is the site will get cleaned up. It's already going through the Act 2 process. It'll get clearance from EPA and Pennsylvania DEP for making sure that the site is clean. One of the bigger environmental benefits of this project is there's an existing stream on the project site. Currently, try to highlight it on here, currently runs underground through the project site and comes back out and empties into the Bushkill Creek. Now, this being underground for such an extended period of time, fish are not traveling up it. So in a lot of our discussions with DEP, we are rerouting the stream and daylighting it. This has been a happy thing for DEP. It's not too often that we have a discussion on a project and they kind of perk up and pay attention. So one of the bigger benefits there is that stream is going to get daylighted, so the natural trout that are in the Bushkill Creek can now also go up this other creek tributary that runs through the project site. With that, we're also installing some wetland floodplain banks to help reduce any flood impacts that might be occurring within the area. As part of the project, we're going through the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission review for stormwater management. We're also in front of DEP and Northampton County Conservation District as far as water quality, stormwater management volumes as well. The site is, because of the contaminants, we're not doing any infiltration on the site. That was determined early on. Absolutely no infiltration is going to happen on the site. So what we're bringing to the site, the three large dark green areas, are what we call managed release concept basins. This is a DEP generated concept for how the basins are to manage stormwater that the site generates. It goes through, each of the basins has 2.5 to 3 feet of soil media that the water filters through to clean up any contaminants that might come off from the truck loading dock areas before the water goes through an under drain and is discharged onto the wetland banks that we're providing along the relocated tributary. Now, I know other discussions have happened to provide a multi-use trail through the site connecting, I believe, this is the Karl Arts Trail, with the trail that's currently dead ends along Hackett Park. So the developers agreed to make that additional connection from 13th Street into the project site, provide a pedestrian bridge across the tributary to the Bushkill, and then run north along the Bushkill Creek up through the site until it can connect to the park trail. Mostly that trail will run along an existing sanitary easement that is serving Forks Township, Palmer Township, and Wilson Borough, I believe. So there's a lot going on in the project, but the developers work to provide a lot of benefits to the community, aside from just making a project that they can make their money from. This needs a large development to handle those benefits that we're bringing in and the environmental cleanup that's happening there. With the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission review, they noted providing additional connection so that if there wants to be a future bus stop along 13th Street, we're also providing a trail that will connect along the frontage and up along the site driveway so that any potential future employees could take the bus and then walk to the building from there without having to be on any public roadways or crossing the public roadways. Are there any questions?
I suspect so. Ms. Wagner, you want to start us off on this? Mr. Graziano?
Yeah, so that, the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission, you appeared in front of them in June, I believe?
Sounds about right.
Okay. We did get a copy of that review. And they did come back, they said, as proposed, the development does not align with the regional plan because it does not match development intensity with sustainable transportation and infrastructure capacity. It goes on a little bit more than that, and there's a lot in here that they disagree with, a whole lot. Can you kind of go through some of that and tell us what exactly you want to fix that, or?
So the sustainable infrastructure is partly the ability to have a bus stop and provide connection for pedestrians into the site without them having to cross any of the interchange intersections that we know are very busy and are not safe for pedestrians. The intensity of the site is kind of a question for everybody. It is a large site. What is sometimes misunderstood with some of these traffic reports is trucks are coming in and out slowly throughout the day. It's not, you have your rush hour for your employee shifts, and that's what shows the AM peak and PM peak times. But the truck traffic is always kind of intimidating. They see a lot of truck parking spaces, but it is spread out through the day. You're having a truck every 2-3 minutes. It's not lines and lines of trucks backing up onto the roadways. They're staggered out as they go in and out. They want to avoid during peak hours when there is rush hour and a lot of traffic on the roads, so they're not sitting and waiting themselves, because time is money for most of those truck drivers. I know there's concerns about them taking alternate routes. We've discussed with, I know the traffic engineers has a lot of discussions with PennDOT on what PennDOT needs to see here to make these improvements in the development work. PennDOT is generally supportive of the proposed development improvements that have been put out there. Hackett Road and Wood Ave are both state roads, so both of those access points are being reviewed by PennDOT with the same traffic study that the city, Wilson Borough, and Palmer Township have also reviewed.
Well, speaking of that traffic impact study, how many daily trips is that?
I couldn't say off the top of my head.
And is that traffic study, is that the same one that you gave to the LDPC?
They've had 2 traffic studies provided to them. I know there was a question on them. The initial study showed a different kind of distribution system, which actually had a smaller footprint, but a higher traffic demand. It would have been like a last mile kind of distribution center, which has a lot of throughput. There's trucks coming in, unloading, and going into delivery vans, which provides a lot of traffic. That concept has been pulled out, and Lehigh Valley Planning Commission has been provided with an updated traffic study specifically for this development.
So this traffic plan is the one that was for 221,000 square foot warehouse?
They initially reviewed
One
that.
we got right in front of us.
They haven't provided additional review since then. In June, we did provide them with an updated study.
Okay, so these numbers that we have here.
Those are inflated versus what will happen with the development you have on the screen behind me.
I'm looking at theirs, and I'll just read it real quick. They have from what you guys said, it was 221,000 square foot. Sorry. They have from what you submitted before, 221,000 square foot warehouse was total trips 1,425 a day, and that's 42 commercial trucks. Then they did a cursory report for both a high cube fulfillment center and just a regular warehouse. And those numbers drastically differ. For the high cube fulfillment center, we have 6,484 passenger vehicles, 191 trucks, for a total of 6,293 total trips. And the last one is passenger vehicles, 1,118 and 604 commercial trucks, which is pretty extensive.
Those are excessive numbers. I can tell you 6,000 passenger vehicles are not going to have here in a day. The parking count that Carl gave you, maximum 3 shifts for those parking counts. Generally, the first shift has the largest parking count. Second shift ranges up about 50% of the passenger vehicles. Second shift is usually 30%, and third shift is usually 20%.
And then also I did notice discrepancy between what we were provided and what you're advertising, because you're advertising the site, correct? And that was for the total number of parking spots. I believe we received 398 car parking spaces with 193 tractor trailers spots, which are significantly bigger spots than the car spots. But your ad on LoopNet has it as 538 car spaces and 193 trailer spaces, for a total of 731. That's what's being advertised.
Okay, that would have to be corrected. Well, what's on the plan is the maximum that we can actually fit on the site.
So what's on the plan? So what's on the plan is correct, but what's on the advertisement is false.
I haven't seen the advertisement. I'm not involved in the marketing of it. But what's on the plan is what we're presenting to you for approval.
And also on that same advertisement, it has that there will be 154 loading dock doors on the facility.
That sounds about correct.
Okay. So we have a 1 million plus square foot facility with a total with 398 car spots and 193 tractor trailers with 154 dock doors, correct?
I believe so.
Right. And no end user yet?
Not at this time.
So we really don't know what this space is going to be used for, correct?
The final end user is being built on spec. The development, as the traffic study goes, is being proposed as a high cube warehouse, is my understanding. And once we present that, if we were coming in with a different use, we would have to come back to you and Wilson Borough for any zoning approval if there's a different use than what's proposed.
I didn't get the kind of warehouse. What kind of warehouse?
It's referred to as a high cube warehouse. It's a taller warehouse and a lot more automated systems inside, so it does not need as many employees as the older traditional warehouses.
I believe the advertisement said it's 40 feet high.
I believe 40 feet clear, but then there's an additional building space for the support structure and HVAC and all that equipment.
Okay. And then also we did receive the Act 167 drainage plan review, and they came back and they basically said the drainage plan has been found to be inconsistent with Act 167 requirements. And the checklist on the back, right here, I believe there's 8 that are marked not consistent. Can you speak about that?
So on all of these items here, we are looking to be will complied. We're not seeking any sort of variance or waivers from these requirements. We will be revising our report and resubmitting it to the Planning Commission for those items. Part of the disconnect, and we're going to have a discussion with them, is some of DEP's requirements and how they review these MRC-based, the managed release concept basins, is a little bit different than what's in the 167 ordinance requirements. So we just kind of have to get a balance between DEP and Planning Commission requirements, as well as the reviewer from Wilson Borough has also weighed in on how some of the calculations are being performed there's a little variation you can do in the method of doing the calculations and still be compliant with the stormwater ordinance. So Wilson Borough's directed us a little bit one way, and the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission has directed us a little bit the other way. We're agnostic on whichever method. It is still compared the existing site versus the post site when everything is done, and we have to meet certain criteria. We just need to get Wilson Borough and Lehigh Valley Planning Commission on one phone call so that we can hash it out, and whoever wants to run with it can run with it, and we'll just comply with it.
I think the other thing with this is going to create significant traffic. I understand you're probably pitching the low side of those numbers, but if it's on the higher side, we're going to have major problems around here, honestly. I mean, that 13th Street exchange right there, it's already clogged. 22 eastbound right there, you're on the ramp a lot of times in 22. Kind of worried on the other side, if they're coming from Jersey and they do get off on 13th Street, the same thing's going to happen over there.
It's clogging up the intersections.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now,
the other thing is, excuse me, when they're going to exit off of Hackett Avenue, they're not all going to go right to 25th Street. I mean, in a perfect world, I guess they would. That would be Palmer Township's problem, and I feel really bad for those guys. I'd love to know what they think about that, because that's congested as is. But if they're turning left out of there, it's going to clog up the neighborhood. It's going to happen. It's going to happen a lot. We're going to have people going through 13th Street, down Wood Avenue, which was just recently done. We'll have, problems down on 7th in Northampton. We'll have them going down Bushkill, having problems with the Silk Mill, all over the place. So how do you stop that from happening?
Primarily, the passenger vehicles are going to be employees, and one of the driving factors for using this location for development is the area's employment factor. So there's people to pull in as the force that works here from the area. So we generally look at as those people already have jobs or driving somewhere else, so they're already on the road. It's kind of the numbers this development will add when the traffic studies are done, just kind of piles it on top of there, and it doesn't really take into account somebody who might already be living in the city of Easton and getting on 22 to go to jobs.
But honestly, I have less concern with car traffic than I do tractor trailer traffic.
And that's where I explained earlier, they're spread out through the bed. It's not a lot of 20 trucks.
Roads all the time. The infrastructure wasn't built for this.
Correct, and this is also being reviewed by PennDOT for what the infrastructure can handle. So because 22 is a PennDOT road, these are PennDOT roads that we're proposing driveways on. So they're taking a comprehensive look at the area for the traffic study. That's why the traffic study did include farther out than we typically would on a development plan to figure out how this will impact.
Do you have that actual traffic study? We just have some numbers.
I do not have.
And then the only other question, at the bottom of Hackett Avenue, there's a little bridge there. It's a little tiny bridge. I didn't even notice it, but it's been there.
Right where the stream relocating is?
I believe it was built in 1912 and it's listed as fair condition.
Yes.
All your traffic is going to be diverted over that bridge.
Correct. So
how will that possibly withstand that every day, every week, every month?
the bridge is being evaluated. It's not specifically a bridge, it's a stone culvert that is there. So it is being evaluated for structural integrity. And some of the improvements that PennDOT's requiring is going to be some road widening for additional shoulder over that. So that structure is either going to be replaced in full, or any deficiencies will be repaired, and the structure will have to be a little bit wider for the additional roadway that PennDOT's requiring, because there is no shoulder on there. It is lane ends right against the guardrail, and PennDOT is requiring shoulder widening there.
For right now, that's all I have.
Did I see that the Wilson Borough Planning Commission already gave approval to this?
They recommended a conditional approval on this as well.
Just to be clear, as opposed to the city of Easton, where you make the final decision on approvals, Wilson Borough works just like the townships. The decision goes to Borough Council. My understanding is there's a meeting next week before Borough Council, and they will be meeting to determine whether to grant approval, conditional approval, or basically to make the decision to go through what you're going through now. So I just want you to understand the Planning Commission in Wilson is only advising the the borough council is the one who will be making the determinations.
And does it matter that 90% of this building is in Williams, is in Wilson? And a
Does it
small
matter?
percentage is in Easton, and no percentage is in Palmer?
Does it matter? I mean, it matters to the extent that I'm sure the city, to some extent, it has to defer over, but I was going to ask some questions about the Wilson process because I have some suggestions as to how we might wish to consider that, because until you know what Wilson actually approves, especially because you saw the engineer write-up for Wilson Borough, it's extensive. We don't know what's been complied with, what hasn't been complied with, and whether Wilson will impose certain conditions that should be relevant, that might be relevant for your consideration.
So does it make sense for us to do anything if we don't have that information?
Wilson Borough's Planning Commission recommendation was a recommendation for approval pending compliance with the engineer's letter. We have already resubmitted plans to the engineer. It's in the review process per the letter, and I expect 90% of that's already struck off, and it'll just be a final few items to be cleaned up.
Well, we have in our possession a letter dated June 7th, 2020, from the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission, which clearly indicates that all of their concerns were not addressed, many of which I don't frankly understand, but I do value their judgment, and I do value their assessments and criticisms. Did you say that have you had communicated with them to respond to this letter of June the 7th?
No, we haven't. As Lehigh Valley Planning Commission is a advisory commission, there is no further meetings or any other schedule with them. The only item we have left outstanding with them is the stormwater management review.
I'm sorry, the what?
The stormwater review.
Well, I think a fellow by the name of Seitz wrote the letter, and I thought he indicated at the end that he would be, once the outlined issues have been addressed, the revised plans and calculations will need to be resubmitted to our office. And by that, he's saying need to be resubmitted to the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission, I presume. That's the last paragraph that he sent to you.
For the main land development portion of it, we have provided them an updated traffic study, an updated plan to go with that traffic study. That was done back in June. They have been so far silent on any other items with that. As far as my understanding of the process is, there is no additional meetings to go for, additional review process with them, except for the stormwater management.
Well, tell me this. How many employees are going to have to come in and out of that facility every day?
With the parking spaces at 398,
Could they guess how many?
that gives a
people are
little
coming
thought to
in?
employees. Not every single space is taken. It's somewhere in the around 360 employees for first shift, which would be half the employees over a whole day.
I hate to
We
say
could
it,
essentially double
that
that number, so
presentation.
it's about
I know
720.
this is recording, right?
And
No.
they're going to be
Yeah.
coming onto the site,
Just so you know.
so they're going to have to
Sorry.
get
No, it's okay.
either on Hackett or they're going to have to come from the eastern side and get on whatever that road is.
22?
What's that?
22, the main highway?
No.
Wood.
Wood Avenue.
Wood Avenue. They're going to come in from Wood Avenue. So that's going to be, what you're saying, 750 coming into the on those two roads.
Spread over three shifts.
Over what?
3 shifts.
All right. And when they get on the site, they're going to be going off what is it, Wood Avenue, and they're going to be turning into the site. Is that correct?
Correct. Wood Avenue and Hackett Avenue are 2 entrances.
And where are they going to go then? They're going to park on the site?
Yes, correct.
All right. And you're going to provide parking for your employees?
Correct.
All right. Now, if what you're saying is, if there's going to be truck traffic, it's going to be going west on 22. It's going to come off 25th Street, Is that correct?
I believe so. I'm
Well, I think that's what.
running through the math in my head.
Well, if we knew what the study said, we would know that, but I'm assuming that that's what, because to get off, for trucks to get off at 13th Street, I can tell you,
No, that's not.
that's gonna be a disaster.
Correct.
You're gonna have the Easton Police Department all over you, you're gonna have the fire company all over you, and you're gonna have a lot of residents from the city of Easton all over you. So they better try to come in from the west, I'm telling you. I was down there tonight and sat at those two little roads that go up into that property, and I just watched the mess of traffic coming down Hackett, all right, down the hill, on North Park, and they wanna get onto 13th Street, and the traffic coming in the opposite direction, who wanna get out of Easton and go west to get home. 5 o'clock, it was a disaster. I'm telling you, it was a disaster. And I don't know where all these cars are gonna go if they've gotta contend with trucks. Now, trucks are gonna be coming down Hackett Park Road, or down Hackett Road, and they're gonna make a left.
Into the project site? No, the intention is almost all the truck traffic will be on 22, entering in and out from the site. Palmer Township has asked us to put a no truck right turn sign, so trucks do not go up Hackett Ave. And the developer is going to work with that.
Always follow the rules.
How are trucks gonna get in there?
I think it'll-
Tell me again, they're gonna come west on 22, and then what are they gonna do?
They're gonna go on Wood Ave and enter the site, turn right in there, and they're gonna go up Hackett Avenue and turn right into the site. The Holy Bridge,
Hold on.
looking at the
Hold on.
place.
Thanks, we're gonna let them finish.
We'll get to that.
Thanks, we'll get to you.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
Well,
And we understand that
by the way, the little stream that you talked about, that stream is running. Have you been there recently?
Yes,
The
yes.
stream is running today.
yes,
It goes under a little wooden bridge that's gonna be on your property. That stream goes into the Bushkill.
correct.
And you know what the Bushkill is?
It's a natural trout stocking
It's a
stream.
AAA rated
Yep.
brown trout hatcheries.
And part of our review with DEP has gone through an extensive review, including Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission, because of the value that Bushkill Creek gives. The developer is also working with the Natural Lands Conservancy, I might be misnaming the group, to help remove the existing dam that is right next to the project site, providing the permitting fees and funds to get that permitted for the dam removal. That's also on environmental cleanup list for Bushkill Creek.
I think, I'm speaking for myself, my biggest problem is gonna be what I'm seeing, traffic getting into that property. I really.
We understand that's a concern, and this is where.
You're an engineer, I would assume that's gonna be your biggest problem to solve. I would love to see the engineering study, what they said about that. But there are other items, you know, there's a walkway along the Bushkill called the Sterner Walkway.
Correct.
A lot of people use it.
And we know it's on the city's list to help make that connection from the Sterner Art Trail to the park in Hackett Avenue, and the developer's going to provide that missing chunk of the trail for a multi-use trail.
There's also a ball field with lights right on the top of the hill. If you look from your property, look to the west, you see it right up on the top. That poses a lot of trouble at different times. But you're gonna have trucks coming in and out over a 24-hour period, I think.
Yes.
And they're gonna come down that hill and they're gonna make a right. They're gonna come in from Wood Ave. Is that where they're coming? All right. Do you contemplate responding to the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission?
We have not at this time. If the city would like to see some sort of more formal response to their bullet points, we can do that. There was some items we noted in the letter that we tried to respond to at the time of the meeting, but there was some difficulties getting us to actually speak during the meeting to help correct some of the items that they were assuming in their letter.
In other words, you're operating under the assumption that you don't need approvals from the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission. They're advisory only. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
All right. I, for one, will not vote to approve this until I see what your answers to them are. Maybe
Thank
you've got
you.
enough votes here.
Thank
I'm done.
you, Mr. Shipman. Good job. I said, good job, Mr. Shipman.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a couple questions I forgot about. I know one of the benefits that are going to be talked about for this is the creation of jobs, but we don't have any idea of an end user at this point or how it's going to work. And you said that this space is just set up for them to go in and set it up any way they want. Are they going to be able to go in there and basically, how much automation are they going to be able to set up in this warehouse?
That will depend on the end user.
Right.
Some end users have more automation than others. So, and technology is changing every day. So we can't exactly predict how much automation is in there. The parking is set up for the anticipated employees that will be required to run the facility.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I mean, we can't really weigh that without knowing any type of usage for this, how much automation there will be, who's the user. I mean, it's a 1 million square foot facility. It's obviously going to be a high volume spot. There's just no question about that. But is it going to be a high volume? Is it going to be a regular high volume, or is it going to be an Amazon high volume? We don't know that either.
It's not going to be an Amazon.
Not Amazon itself, but it could be something similar to an Amazon. Yes, whatever. Like that.
But yeah, there's a lot of logistics firms that kind of would run a facility like this.
And the other question I wanted to ask, since Mr. Etchinson's not here today and he always asks the question, you got a really big roof there. A very big roof. Right?
Correct.
What type of renewables, solar, and things of that nature are you going to be using?
I do not believe that's been decided at this time.
So nothing on the top of the warehouse as far as...
Nothing decided. I do know that the economics of solar makes sense. It actually, putting it up will save money long term.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you're going to
Especially
operate this humongous warehouse that's going to take a strain on the resources, I would hope that you would put some back in as well. I think that would be absolutely necessary. That's it.
One of the benefits of chairing the commission is I get to go last. And that's good because my colleagues here asked some really good questions, and many of the ones that I would have asked. I definitely have share the concerns. I think the biggest concern we've all shared is around the traffic situation here. You know, we can say all we want to about trucks are going to be directed to certain places, but we know that doesn't happen in reality. And so the roads that have been cited are going to be used heavily, whether it's by trucks or by cars. Hackett Avenue, Wood Avenue, 13th Street, etc. More of a concern to me than the amount of traffic is the size of the vehicles. These roads were not built for that. And the fact that PennDOT is involved is good to hear, but we don't know what they're going to do. But we hear lots of things from PennDOT about what they might do or what they think they're going to do, and 20 years later, they're not done. Long after planning commissions have made decisions. I think the fact that you were not planning to address the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission's objections is a mistake. We take those recommendations very seriously here, and we appreciate the effort they put in, and the full letter was very compelling, I thought. So be concerned about that. Mr. Graziano mentioned the drainage plan, the inconsistencies there, and things that haven't been fully accomplished yet. And as has been raised, and I want to give you the floor momentarily, because I know you have some questions, Mr. Scheer. The fact that we also don't know exactly where Wilson Borough, who will be most affected by this, is going, is also, it feels like all of this is, and I understand the timelines, things come to us when they come to us, but there's a lot of unanswered questions here. So that's not a question, that's all of that's just statements, but if you would like to respond to it, you're welcome to.
We can definitely provide a point-by-point response to the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission letter. We're happy to do that. There's just, we didn't plan a response to Lehigh Valley because there's not really a process to respond to them for another meeting, another presentation from them, without almost kind of treating it like a full new submission and review for them.
And we might be inclined, if you respond to those points, to ask them for their feedback on those points.
And we can do that, and that would be a fair thing for us to provide. As far as Wilson Borough, to date, we've only heard things in favor for the project. We did get the recommendation from the Planning Commission to take it to Borough Council. That is next week.
Yeah.
That we anticipate that. We've worked with them for any zoning issues along the site to eliminate zoning issues and some of their other major concerns.
Yeah, we appreciate that you've had a positive interaction, that there's days left for people to attend meetings and come with different thoughts around that. I heard a colleague here talk about wanting to hear from Palmer Township, which would also be nice because I think they might have some concerns as well. So thank you. I appreciate your responses to those. Mr. Scheer, do you have questions that you'd like to ask?
Yes, not that many. Really more a matter, you talk about logistics, and I'm trying to deal with the logistics when you're dealing with two municipalities. And even though 90% of this project may be in Wilson, the impact, other than on the actual piece of land, to the community in Easton is at least equal, I think, to what it will have in Wilson, other than the fact that Wilson will get more ratables.
Works here.
Well, that's what there's two different types of impacts. One is financial, and that's going to go to Wilson, the favorable part. The potential traffic and quality of life issues will be in Easton, and that's where the Planning Commission addressed a number of these. But there's a process, and you already volunteered to deal with them on a check-off point of view. And you may well have been addressing, I believe you may well have been addressing a lot of these as you've been going on and moving ahead with answering the Wilson Borough's engineer's report. And so that's where the timing and the logistics is of some concern to me. But let me ask you something specifically, because I'm a little confused about where is PennDOT. Do you have a highway occupancy permit?
It has not been issued yet. PennDOT has somewhat changed their process. You go for initial scoping meeting where you show them concepts and the general plan of what you intend to do for a traffic study. And during that process is when they want you to perform the traffic study. They take an initial look at it. They want feedback from, in this case, City of Easton, Wilson Borough, and Palmer Township in conjunction with their review of the study. It is, the HOP is still in process with PennDOT as we wrap up the traffic study, which determines the improvements that they're requiring.
And that, with some of the concerns that have been raised, that becomes so critical. And it makes me wonder whether this whole submission is premature until that's available, because then you're dealing with actual numbers, and you're also dealing with conditions that PennDOT may put on that will address some of these concerns that everyone raised on the structures that will accommodate this traffic flow. Is there a timeline here as far as submission and deemed approvals?
They submitted about 60 days ago.
Okay.
And our review has to be within 90 days.
Okay, well then there is some time pressure unless you, to me, the ideal situation is for this board to be voting two things. When PennDOT's information is available, and second, when Wilson has completed its review and done the checklist of the engineering work, so that and it would be interesting if we reserve the right in this, any approvals for the comments of our different departments like engineering and fire. It would be interesting in a project like this, once Wilson has approved and had their own conditions potentially in there, to ask our staff whether they have any input beforehand as opposed to afterwards. That's just one observation, because we don't have our own internal, besides the planning staff, which you're looking at zoning compliance and very specific things, but we haven't. Mr. Hopkins, I know, has spent time on it, and I know, I think he's comfortable with the process eventually with improvements agreements and dealing with stormwater, which is one of the major impacts, which we don't have the details on here, but I know it's one of the concerns. Very major concern was, or a benefit was the walking path and the Carl Sterner extension and the bicycle path. And that's why in the proposed resolution there is now a provision that this would be conditional upon an improvements agreement that guarantees that this will get done. But I still see this huge gap. And so the question is, would the developer be willing to waive the time? So if the board wishes to continue it with your consent, you could come back to the planning commission where you can answer some of the concerns that they have. PennDOT may well have answered a lot of them, and we will have very specific studies as to what capacity is what the traffic is going to be, trucks, workers, employees, and if it is a fulfillment center, the smaller box trucks or whatever would be used for deliveries.
I think an extension of time would be appropriate.
And you would agree to waive any time, the running of the time in the interim?
With a cutoff. I don't want to put like an indefinite waiver of time. This never gets. I would say something like a 60 days. Then they could address again.
That we would have to. That the commission would have to act on this by, let's say, the November meeting. Which instead of using 60 days, it would be put on that agenda, and especially if that gives you enough time to get all these other pieces together, which will make your task, your being the planning commission's task, with a lot more information to act intelligently on.
When were you hoping to break ground?
There's a lot of cleanup. There's a lot of cleanup work.
There's the remaining Act 2 cleanup.
Yeah.
The EPA and DEP has to be signed off on and approved.
Yeah, and that's going to take a long time.
They're well into the process, but yeah, it is not a quick process. There's a lot of testing and evaluation and plans and reports to have.
Yeah, the whole. I mean, I don't know what your contracts are like, but most contracts are going to have an out if something really bad is discovered there. So, in any event, do we have a form that we can have the developer, just sign to have this continue to November? If this is, by the way, if that's what the commission would be inclined to do, you have a lot of people here who probably want to comment, and you should hear from them. But I just wanted to broach that. I'm particularly concerned that we don't have PennDOT and we don't have a clear picture of what Wilson is doing.
But it's been clear, I think, from the questions that there's concerns with lack of information. So I think you've addressed that. You've asked, whether continuance or waiver would be appropriate in the 2-month, 60-day time frame. That would be, we have a meeting on November 6th. So I guess the question's been asked. Is that acceptable to you folks?
Yes.
Okay. Because, obviously you've already heard concerns of not wanting to approve this, and that this will probably be your best outcome. I don't even think the recommendation here is for a conditional final approval. Best, you might get a conditional preliminary approval, which would force you to come back here anyway. And I'm not even sure you get that tonight. So I think it's wise to take a pause. I'm really pleased that the folks who are out here, because we do want to hear what you have to say tonight, and so we're not just sending you off for a couple months and come back in November. So we do want to hear what you have to say since you're here. So if that being the case, you have other questions that you'd like to ask?
No, there is going to be, whatever conditions we do at the end, if there's approvals, I just wanted to point out that we should add, and I'll remind, we should add conditions on FEMA and PA Department of Environmental Review and permit approves. We don't have that on here, and that was mentioned in the LVPC, and it's just common sense that we include that as a condition. And yeah, the only other thing when I was thinking November, by the way, is somewhat selfish because our next meeting, I will not be here, but I'll wish you all a happy and healthy New Year because it's the first night of Rosh Hashanah, and I will not be here.
Well, you have plenty of time then to make sure that Mr. Clark will be here.
And actually, Mr. Clark has a board of governors meeting, so Mr. I actually have a second assistant, and he will be here. I already arranged that.
Very good, very good.
So,
All right.
Just for clarification, come back in November. In the interim, we'll provide to Carl and the review staff any PennDOT recommendations and PennDOT requirements. Point-by-point response to the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission letter. We anticipate we should have the Wilson Borough approval at that point.
Okay, that would help. All that would help. What about Palmer?
Palmer, we have provided them with plans, and we've had sit-down meetings with them. Their concerns were related to the traffic, and they've been given the opportunity to review the traffic study and reply to PennDOT with that. PennDOT's review process, they do include all the municipalities involved with this. Whenever they send out comment letters, the municipalities are all CC'd on those comment letters to see.
And we understand too that you've agreed to do due diligence on these items, but very, very well may be the fact that we come back in November, we don't still have some answers. And so we'll have to deal with that as it comes.
Mm-hmm. Well, when we come back, we anticipate you'll see that everything that's been commented to us, we're generally looking to comply with it and be compliant with any ordinance requirements.
Fantastic.
And it'd probably be helpful if we have like a smaller visible picture of some of these improvements that have been promised, like the cost starts, so everybody can visually see what the developer is giving as part of its give back to the community and based on impact. I mean, there's always a trade-off on these developments.
Right. Any other questions, Mr. Shear? Go ahead.
Is there a grading plan available for us?
Yes.
Reading through some of this, it says we're getting 10-foot retaining walls.
There are large retaining walls.
Grading
they're all
plan.
going to be
Grading plan?
put through a structural engineer. Those are in process of getting the final design on the retaining walls for this. We do understand it's a very vertical site, and we're flattening out a large portion of the site. So there is a grading plan. I could bring it up now if you would like.
If that could be a visual that, as Mr. Shear suggested, because that's good that we see some of these things. Are there other questions up here?
I just have one other question, and it doesn't have anything to do with what I was talking about before. That site, I guess you know, was used to build fires and melt down metal products to take so that they can develop the pigment for paint.
Yes.
So it was hideously, it was a dirty project. I was wondering if in your studies, have you done any study of the earth and the water that's flowing out there? Is it clean?
That is part of the Act 2 cleanup that's on the site. They did identify some contaminants in various spots on the site, hot spots that need to be addressed. All of that is part of the Act 2 EPA cleanup plan. So there has been concerns about past pollution into the tributary that runs through there.
Yeah.
There's buildings that were built over top of it, and issues with, I think, leaking oil drums into the tributary. All those buildings have been torn down, and at least the basement's filled just so they're not in danger right now. But across the site, that's going to get cleaned up. And one of the things with relocating the stream is we're moving the stream out of the hot spots to an area that's been identified as not having contaminants.
Okay, so you're gonna be satisfied when you go in there, you're gonna have employees, you're gonna have running water, you're gonna have toilets, you're gonna have places for them to at least get water.
It's all public water supply.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Have a seat if you'd like. We're going to ask for members of the public who would like to speak regarding this. I want to remind you that in the opportunity for public input on this, the public input we intend to be directed to the commissioners. It's us who ultimately have to make a decision. And so this is not an opportunity for Q&A with the developer. That's why we asked the developer to sit down. They've done their presentation. They've told us what they're proposing. We obviously have something potentially on the table to postpone this, and the commission will decide on that. But we do want to hear what you have to say because you're here tonight. And Councilman Pinnabone, I see you've gotten to the front of the line. The floor is yours.
He almost got me.
Yes, he did.
Good afternoon, Frank Pinnabone, 123 South 3rd Street. Mr. Green, I'm going to address my question, or Dr. Green, pardon me. I'm going to address my questions to the commission. I have about 6 questions. Should I do them all at once and then?
Yeah.
I know they're going to prefer to come back in November, so hopefully they can have bring those answers back.
Yeah, I would hope that they're not sitting here to answer, but I'm sure they're taking notes, and we'd love to have those answers for you and for us.
So like Commissioner Graziano, I went through the LVPC report. I'm not really sure, and I'll look into that tomorrow, how our planning commission or our planning directors recommended approval on this with so many unknowns. That's something I'd like to hear about this week. But some of the issues that were raised from LVPC was the size of the footprint being so large that it creates a huge amount of impervious surface very close to the Bushkill Creek. And a lot contains natural features such as steep slopes and woodlands. There's no landscape design shown on any of the landscape plan sheets. The basins to be constructed to manage stormwater will require the relocation of the unnamed tributary, which they mentioned today. I'd like to see what the relocation actually entails. What does that mean, relocating the tributary that goes into the Bushkill? The plan set only shows parking for trailers up to approximately 62 feet in length, which would be inadequate because the tractor trailers up to 70 feet in length are approved for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. The curved Y intersection at Wood Avenue and Hackett Avenue would create a difficult intersection for traffic to navigate. Traffic conflicts will be exacerbated by the increased vehicle traffic generated by the Commerce Park. And as Mr. Graziano mentioned, PennDOT has listed the bridge on Hackett Avenue as fair. So I'd like to see what kind of work is going to be done to that before we start bringing so many vehicles and tractor trailers over it. Also, the geometry of the interchange at Route 22 and Wood Avenue may be difficult for tractor trailers to safely and efficiently navigate. On a personal note, I owned a trucking company for a few years and we sold it to a larger company. I know that the drivers have to get to a certain location on time. They can drive 10 hours and if they're 5 minutes late, they won't get paid. I don't want to see tractor trailers driving through our West Ward communities. We hear from College Hill residents that when 611 is blocked off or closed, we have tractor trailers going up to Tail Street and their houses shake and it's very all hours of the night. We don't want to add that to the West Ward. Our residents deserve better than that. They're concerned about that. So I hope there'll be some plans that would discuss that. My understanding is LVPC Director Carroll of the Director of Transportation for Pennsylvania and PennDOT are preparing to commission a study on 22, not just for widening, but to discuss ramps, because a lot of our ramps, especially these ramps that we're talking about, aren't adequate for the volume that we have now. As Mr. Graziano said, cars are backed up onto 22. They surely won't be adequate with all the cars coming. And even if the tractor trailers do take 25th Street, which if they're rushing and they need to get there at a certain time, they might go past 25th Street to get off on 13th, which is going to make that hard left to go down to Wood Avenue very unsafe for everybody else. But if the tractor trailers do listen and get off on 25th Street, there's still a lot of vans and employee personal vehicles that are going to be coming to 13th Street. and it's just gonna cause a heck of a traffic mess, and people backed up even more on the 22, making it extremely dangerous for our residents and our visitors. So I would encourage that we get all those answers in November or prior to, before we go any further on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Marty Rabbits, 144 Church Street. I just want to mention to the commissioners that there's already, this was said, my bad hearing didn't hear it, but there's already an average of 12 to 15 cars waiting at 12th Street from 3:30 to 5 o'clock every night. This is gonna, the amount of traffic that this particular project is gonna add will need to extend the exit ramp another 500 yards or till 25th Street. And I think that the points you've made are very good. And I just, I can't see having such a major amount of traffic in this particular area. I don't know what he meant by infiltration of on-site. Anyone know what that means? He said that there's not going to be any infiltration. I don't know what that means. It's totally lost. They didn't explain it to me. Anyone know what that means?
Would you like to answer that as a point of fact, sir?
Just infiltration of stormwater. DEP encourages when you collect the stormwater to infiltrate it on site, let it soak into the ground and into the groundwater table. It's not allowed on here. DEP has told us no, on no terms, just absolutely not because of the contaminants on site.
Yeah, right, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Evans.
I can't wait for the presentation, there's some options. Do you record that I can put it into that?
Depends how long the presentation will be. We have several people who are going to speak
I
tonight.
understand.
And how long do you intend to?
Okay, it is 7 slides and 3 slides for the citations, the references that simply dignify what I'm saying.
10 slides could take 5 minutes, or it could take an hour.
Yeah, it'll take more like, actually, if someone can give me a watch, I'm very accustomed to public speaking.
Terrific.
Yeah, so if someone can give me a watch, give me like 10 minutes.
10
Cool,
minutes, 10
that'd be
minutes,
great.
10 minutes are yours.
Yeah, can you hook me up? Oh, Frank, thank you so much.
Could you identify yourself though?
Yeah, sure. It's Carol Inman, INMAN, 700 Hamilton Street.
You know her?
Here in Easton.
Thank you, Ms. Edmond.
Thank you.
Do you?
Yeah.
What's this? What's that? Okay. 10 minutes once I get started.
Anybody could feel free to give me some assistance.
Good. What are they doing? Does she need a watch?
10 minutes. No, she has. Frank's
She
giving her
has.
a
Great if you would,
What is Frank?
Frank's giving her a watch. He gave her a watch.
I know, but what does he need help with?
certainly do that.
I gotta put this down for a sec. I was taking it.
She need help with that.
Um,
How about if she needs a shirt? You gotta take your shirt off? Or?
no, Marty. Oh my God. She wanted a watch. I could. There's a timer on it. I could just set the timer.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh my goodness. No. The answer is no.
There are
I did work for her, right?
What I'm going to do is raise an issue that has not yet been discussed, which is public health.
Microphone.
Speak up.
Microphone, please.
I'm sorry, yeah, I have hearing problem too. So I'm going to address something that has not been addressed, an unanswered question that has not yet even been brought up. And that is the question of the public health risks that warehouses pose. And so in this presentation, what I did was pull all from local sources and that lay people can understand. I have access to the institutes of health, but that is like too complicated. So I tried to, just get it, but just, so everything that I'm going to say can be dignified with the citation. No problem. Okay, so what I'm going to do is talk through the slides, okay? And feel free to ask probing questions, because sometimes it's a little hard if I'm looking at the slide. I know what
But we're here to gather your input, so we may have questions, but if you just provide your input, talking through the slides, and I think sending them again into the staff, we will get to see your citations and all the work that you've done. So that would be great.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so warehouses increase the health risks of residents in the area. Heavy traffic causes air pollution that affects people with respiratory problems, doesn't just worsen the problems that they would have, it can cause the problems, okay, particulate matter in the soup. There's noise pollution, and I'll point out that that area that is no longer up there creates a kind of gel if you live in that part of Easton, so that all the noise that comes from 22, the motorcycles going through Cemetery Curve, like we hear that, far away. So there's a noise pollution. So in terms of the health risk, you're talking about asthma, lung cancer, high blood pressure, heart disease, mental illness, okay, and all this is documented at the end of this presentation, mental illness, hearing problems, and neurological problems such as Parkinson's, okay? So the kinds of noise that diesel trucks create and ring through the Dell, that's no longer up there, will be drastically increased. And that causes tinnitus, which is ringing in the ears. High blood pressure raises people's blood pressure, and Lord knows we don't need that these days in this political climate. Heart disease, and it exacerbates problems faced by those with mental health disorders, just the sound. Okay, so every vehicle on the road contributes to air pollution, which is what I'm most concerned about. However, heavy-duty trucks, such as those that will be coming, contribute significantly more. And I'm just going to show you this whole bar chart just to see that it's twice as much as the next most concerning polluter. Okay, so all the diesel trucks, are going to put noxious emissions into our air, okay? And because we live in a valley, right, and we get air, what is it called, inversions, sorry, and we see this with wildfires, and the quality of air here in the Lehigh Valley on a day-to-day basis can be very bad. And so that the air inversions, wherever you have a valley, it's all trapped here because we're locked between South Mountain and Blue Mountain, thank you. And also I'm concerned about the specific area where this warehouse is going to be placed. It is in a little dell, right, in a valley, so that immediate surrounding area, including our friends who live on 13th Street, Silk Mill, lots of other people, they're going to suffer the worst from this because things are going to get inverted there and trapped there, right? So it has been proven, okay, and I have the citations to prove this, that diesel fumes are a class 1, meaning the highest, cancer-causing agents that have been linked to lung cancer and associated diseases such as bladder cancer and prostate cancer. So this obviously concerns the carbon monoxide and the nitrogen oxide, carbon dioxide, which is really bad. Those gases invade your lungs, but even worse, the fumes from the black plumes that you see coming off these big trucks contain soot and tiny particulate matter that get past your natural defenses, get into your lungs, into your bronchial tubes, and not just worsen things like asthma, cancer, COVID, COPD, that kind of thing. They actually cause it. Okay, it's of deep concern, and I would like you to take a look at some of the references that I posted. The Lehigh Valley, I want to plead on behalf of all of the residents here. The Lehigh Valley already has the highest rate of childhood cancer in the U.S. This is Allentown specifically, but it's also out here. And so that's worse than Detroit, LA, New York, that kind of thing. And that was a fact that was found in 2021. And with all these new warehouses that are coming into this area, like how much worse is that going to get it? Can we allow it without trying to impose additional public health controls or some kind of mediating factors that would help to reduce the kind of pollutants that these trucks and the warehouses specifically are bringing into our society, into our community. This is a very densely populated, I'm not, telling you, but obviously, and I'm very concerned. I'm very concerned about the residents who live in the immediate area, the kind of noise that's going to come off that dell. It already rings. I live far away. I sit on my porch, and my enjoyment, my quality of life of that porch is diminished because of all the noise that's already coming off the 22, sorry. Okay, so I have a slide that shows a little kid coughing. So, but the National Resource Defense Council has stated that there's a lot of sick people at the end of a tractor trailer tailpipe, especially children. And shouldn't we act to protect them? Lung cancer has been firmly linked to diesel emissions, and I'm trying to make this short for you because I appreciate your time, I really do. So basically, that's what I'm saying. This is not a controversial issue. I'm not bringing it up, but it's something that warehouse developers and these site developers rarely bring up. And I really feel that if you are contemplating such a development and you are not directly taking into consideration the kind of public health risks that mega developments like this is not a small warehouse. This is conceivably could be very problematic, as a lot of you have pointed out. And the larger that they are, the more trucks that they have, the more public health risks that they're posing. I want to state that Chet Elliott, who used to sit on the planning board, is currently involved in doing an air quality study here in the Lehigh Valley. It's not completed yet, but their preliminary results, which have been reported in the paper, show conclusively that air quality is worse near highways, no surprise, and warehouses. So I will send you, and if this is all in layman's terms.
Thank you.
No, I wanted her to include something. The middle school.
Oh, yeah.
The middle school's like.
Good evening,
there.
Commissioner.
No, I'm good. I'm here.
Indulge me for a second. I'm gonna go backwards, go forward here. My concern is, as everyone else here,
Name.
the truck traffic. But let me go back. As a youth working advisor, trying to work my way through school, I can tell you that my concern is the development there, wholeheartedly. I can remember working there and coming home and going to sleep and red pigment coming out of my skin. I can remember working what they call the umber yard, where you had to go down in a tank and pull up this umber or a powder source that would get up in your nose and in your lungs. And I kind of contribute that to my sometimes asthmatic attacks. You don't notice as you're going through, you're just looking, trying to make a little bit of cash to get through school. But let me go forward here and to say that I have a real concern that the developer did not even consider or may have considered the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission's letter. To shun such a letter from such a integral part of our Lehigh Valley, and surely the commissioners indulge on a daily basis or sometimes quarterly basis with them. It's a real concern for me. We're all concerned about the traffic and how that's going to affect. And PennDOT has even said which way that traffic is going to flow. Their concerns that, yeah, we know there's a problem, but for us in Easton, we're concerned because one way or the other is either going to back up on the highway, as Mr. Penamone said, back up in our West Ward. And where do you turn about? The point of the matter that the commissioners and I wholeheartedly agree, giving the developer time to connect bullet points, so to speak, and come back with some answers November 6th. I know personally I would be here to listen to that because it is a concern of mine, not just as a council person, but a citizen and a part of the community. So I thank you for your time. I thank you for listening. I thank you for your decisions that you have going forward. I think you're going in the right direction. Slow is good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for the well-researched presentation prior to the last speaker. My name is Rebecca Migdal. I'm a business owner here. My husband and I own Book and Puppet Company, the local community bookstore. We live less than half a mile from the site that is proposed for this warehouse. And I'm also a university professor. Recently, I did a unit with my graphic design students on the environment and creating artwork to help the environment. And one of the things I learned was that the Lehigh River was one of the top 10 endangered rivers in the whole country last year, and it was due primarily to the out-of-control development of these kind of warehouse projects, which were placed too close to waterways, and where the impervious surfaces caused runoff containing diesel, fuel, and other contaminants into our rivers and into our streams. So that was something that really concerned me. When I found out today about this project, I came on down, and I didn't have time to do the kind of preparation that some people have, but I did create a graphic, because one of the other things, I'm sorry, I've forgotten your name.
Carol.
As Carol pointed out, the impacts of diesel fuel particulates in the air are established to cause serious health problems for people, especially within a half mile, but up to 2 miles radius from the development. So I actually just made a graphic to help you visualize what that looks like. The small red circle is the area where there's high likelihood of serious health impacts. That contains my house, also contains an elementary school. It contains the YMCA, where children play outside.
The middle school.
And it contains a portion of a jogging trail where people get their exercise. So those areas would be inundated with diesel fuel fumes by a project of this scale. The large circle is simply the area that has a probability of these health impacts, not a certainty. And that's all of Easton. All of Easton, neighboring communities, and into New Jersey would be influenced by that. It doesn't even take into consideration the additional impacts of the additional traffic on the roadways. Which might look something like this. Because of the different routes in all go through Easton. So I think it would be unconscionable, in my opinion, to place this kind of a project in and adjacent to residential areas. And I felt so strongly about that, that despite the fact that I'm extremely busy right now because we're moving our store, I stopped everything and I made this picture and I came down to say what I had to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Susan Ravitz. I'm the wife of Artie Ravitz. Although he says rabbits, I say Ravitz, but we're the same people. We are married to each other. And I live at 144 Church Street. And I just have a very short presentation. I don't know how many of you, probably most everybody, has driven around the Lehigh Valley. Do you notice if you drive like into New Jersey, close by, and if you drive out in the country, how many warehouses there already are? Drive along 22, these huge white, you know, not particularly pleasant looking buildings with no windows, and they have openings so people can, for the trucks. It's all, but there's tons of them. And I have started hearing that a couple are closing and they're laying off workers. Because this is a phenomenon that seems to me, I didn't really do a whole lot of research or look up the history, but it seems to me that during COVID, it became such a major thing to not want to go into stores and be around people that stores began noticing they were getting people wanting them to ship stuff. And they wanted to buy it by mail. And all of a sudden, I could be corrected about it, but I don't remember that there were so darn many warehouses all over the valley. And the scuttlebutt that I hear is this phenomena of all of everything coming and being stored in the warehouses is not likely to last very long. And one of the things that other cultures have done, not ours, but a lot of indigenous cultures, and I know particularly because I heard a lecture about it in Ethiopia, that certain decisions of significance that might be long-lasting are usually evaluated. Even when somebody in Ethiopia gets married, they want to know 7 generations of what the people did and what they were about. But they also look into other projects like that. What's gonna come in that space, this 1 million feet building that has no windows, doesn't have plumbing, doesn't have a lot of plumbing, and it's not going to become, senior housing or something. It's probably not built for that kind of thing at all because it's holding products, and I think that that's something in addition to so much information about the impact, the negative impact. By the presentations that we're giving, a lot of that is new information to me, but I think that's very important. I don't know if you guys are all aware, but Pfizer, I lived in Forks Township. I lived down Bushkill Drive and you went up Mittman Road. So I was living up, I wasn't, except that I drove by Pfizer all the time in that property. I wasn't looking at it or anything. But there were many people suffering, and there was a lot of action to do something about Pfizer. A lot of people had asthma. It polluted and hurt people, and they were very aware that it was coming from Pfizer. And I think, the truck traffic too. will create, obviously from, unless this is not accurate information, but I don't have any reason to doubt it, that what Carol gave was just accurate information about the impact, or at least it's been shown to be true in studies. I mean, the idea of putting a bicycle something near this facility, when you hear that report, sounds ridiculous. You're gonna have a bunch of kids doing, maybe it would be a park for those kids that do those incredible tricks around Northampton Street, which is dangerous. They'd have a place to be able to perform. But it probably will be polluted. So that's what I wanted to say. I think there's too many, and I don't think they're gonna last that long, and that might be one that's gonna die, and then what's gonna come in its place in such a huge, gigantic thing? I don't know. But I think it's something that when we're planning, we need to think about and maybe come up with some other ideas for that particular space that are more neighbor-friendly, user-friendly, and not such polluting kind of deals. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Amy Bacadoro, 1008 Ferry Street. I'm definitely in the dark red circle of one of those maps. So I had a question regarding the Planning Commission report. Did it address light pollution at all in there?
Yeah, I thought it did.
Okay.
There was something about the lighting on there.
They were looking for the lighting plan and more information. That's why what I'm hoping is that when the developer goes through Wilson, because I believe there's references in the engineering report, they'll be addressing that, so that can be presented to the Planning Commission as well.
Okay. I think that's another large concern, especially for how densely populated that area is with the silk mill, the folks who live on the ridge there, and I'm sure that pollution stretches farther into the West Ward neighborhood and beyond. The other point I wanted to make was that every developer that has built a warehouse in the Lehigh Valley has stood before some kind of municipal board and said to them, don't worry about the traffic. And all you have to do is spend a day in the Lehigh Valley to know that that's not true. So when that is said, it means nothing, it's hollow. It means you've dismissed my comment to you about how this affects our lives, the residents that live here. I was out in Bethlehem today, and I Googled how to get to this address coming back through Route 22, and it gave me two ways to go. The first one allowed me to get off at 25th Street and go back through Wood Avenue, which is what is being suggested here. The second one told me to get off at 13th Street, travel just past that off-ramp, and then make not a hard left-hand turn, but a full U-turn to get into this location. So I am sure that there is going to be not one, not two, but multiple tractor trailers that believe that they can make that left-hand U-turn. And when they do that, that snarls every piece of traffic coming off of 13th Street trying to get onto Route 22, and also traffic trying to get off or come through Wood Avenue. So although they may be spread out through the day to getting off that exit, it just takes one to snarl that traffic for who knows how long. As Mr. Graziano pointed out, if they don't make that hard left, then they're going to move through that neighborhood, which means they have to go up Wood Avenue, or they have to make it onto 13th Street to get onto Northampton Street, which means they then have to turn around somewhere, some way, around some block, some residential block in the West Ward. 2 days ago, my neighbor, who owns a property on the corner, who drives a large tractor trailer, came down Ferry Street with his tractor trailer. It sounded like an airplane landing in the middle of that road. And he wasn't going fast, he wasn't moving, he was trying to pull over to get out to look at his property. But that noise is so massive and unsettling into a residential area. So although traffic isn't going to be a problem, it's going to be a problem. And as a resident, I don't want to deal with this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anthony Marcini, 200 North 7th Street, Easton, Pennsylvania. Maybe missed it. Did they give you an idea of the number of trucks per day that were coming through there? I missed that. What was the total of that? Do you remember, Frank?
Yeah, it was very loose. It was a loose. There was, yeah, it was through the planning committee. Lehigh Valley Planning Commission had numbers, and they said they had different numbers today than that.
Can I address them? I know it's interesting. Can you guys know the number of the truck? I know you don't have an end user, but could you, like, what a facility this size?
So the reality is that you submitted a proposal that included 260-some thousand square feet. It's a million. And so the LVPC extrapolated and looked at what it might look like. So what we're awaiting is the results.
So we don't have that number.
We don't actually have that number until I think until we get a traffic study that would actually show that.
All right. So
which is also part of the reason that the information's incomplete.
I would assume that a 1 million square foot warehouse would have a number of trucks coming and going. And so I grew up here. Anybody who's grown up here knows that space well. They know that entryway off of Hackett's to Wood is a very difficult intersection, as is. Never mind driving a semi that way. I'm assuming there'll have to be a stoplight there, because I don't know how you're going to exit on the Wood as a semi with cars coming through, and then you're going to have multiple trucks backed up waiting to get onto the highway. And then, don't take 13th Street into consideration. I mean, that's silly, but I'm sure they will, because I agree with that, because I live on the corner of Bushkill and 7th, and there's semis up there, right? There's semis up there. They come up that way. I have no idea why. We've had multiple times where police had to have them back up because they can't make that turn. GPS is going to tell them where to go. And then you say, okay, well, fine, they don't take 13th Street. That's a silly option in the first place, but I'm pretty sure you're going to get that regardless. Especially if they're going to try and go points east, right? They're going to come out, they're going to turn left, go up to the interchange, try and get onto the highway, and head towards New Jersey. And that's an improbable. Okay, let's just assume that's not going to happen. You're all going to 25th Street. 25th Street is not designed that way either. If you come down Wood to 25th Street, if you're going to head east, you can enter the highway pretty easily. If you're heading west, you have to go down 25th Street, turn onto the on-ramp, which is basically the way you get into that shopping plaza, and then get on the highway. Well, that's ridiculous as well. And now, again, I like math. Math is easy, right? Math is a solid. If you told me 200 trucks are going to come through that every day, I'm going to break it up by hours, 24 hours a day. They're not going to do it every day. And so let's say it's 200, right? Just for a guess. Or let's make it 240 for easy math. That's 10 an hour. That's one every 6 minutes coming out of that entryway. Like, how would you ever manage that at Wood and Hackett's? It'd be implausible. You would need a stoplight. There's no other way to do it. And I don't know how many people, again, growing up here, how many accidents occurred at the intersection of Wood and Hackett's, because it's a bit of a blind turn. And people cruise through there. It's, it's part of the highway system, just like Bushkill Drive and Bushkill Street are part of the highway system. So if I was a developer, I would be like, why would we do this here? I would contemplate that. It just seems really silly. Mr. Chair made a good point too with our specific position in this, because our position as a municipality is limited, correct? We're like 10% of this property. But we're going to take on 100% of the baggage with this property. Wilson takes on nothing. Wilson's, as far as I understand, this municipal line is on the south side of Wood Ave, correct? So they're going to get all the ratables, but none of the traffic. Easton's going to get the traffic, and Palmer's going to get the traffic. Yep. And then we have to figure out how to deal with the infrastructure problems that come with that. And I mean, a link to the park, to the Carlstone Arts Trail, that's all nice. I mean, the ponds, the retaining ponds, probably nice to look at. To make that ground level, how high is that going to have to be just to make it level, to put a 1 million square foot building on it? 40 foot and another 40 foot. you'll see that building, and then the lights, you'll see that building. I bet you I'll be able to see that building from the top of Jackson Street. I don't think that'd be difficult at all. I don't know. I like growth. I'm a capitalist. I own a business downtown. This seems very odd to me that this would be anybody present this who's driven these roads. So I don't know, did they drive the roads? Do they know that these roads are like? Are they gonna go up through Tatamy? Can you imagine that? They go up Hackett's or up 13th and take Bushkill Drive to get to the Tatamy exit because GPS told them so? Because that's what GPS does. It's mindless. It doesn't say, oh, I'm a truck. You can't dial it in and say, I'm driving a truck. What's the best way for a truck to go? It just tells you where to go, and then you follow it. And that's why they end up at 7th and Bushkill, because they're following GPS. So when I hear people say they won't make a right-hand turn, they won't make a left-hand turn, they'll drive this way, they'll drive that way. There will only be like one every hour. I find it really implausible with the 1 million square foot building that they have to find a way to support financially. So I think 200 trucks is like us being kind. I think you're probably looking at like twice as much as that just to make that building worth the money. And if you have 400 trucks coming out of that space a day, we'll never get anywhere. We'll have to go around it, and then I don't know. You wouldn't even get downtown. You have to go. How would you even get around town? How would you get around? I wouldn't even know how to get places. If I was Piscatello's and I had a shop down there, I'd be stressed out. Because how are you going to get in and out of their parking lot? So it's just, I'm all for planning. I'm all for smart growth. This does not seem like it's wisdom. So I appreciate your time. And the next time we do this, if we could do this again, if we could have an overview of the highway system, so we can have a conversation with the developers, like what their intentions are about the trucks coming down Wood to 25th and heading east on 22.
That really should be in the traffic study. If there's a traffic study done, it should be in there. Now, when the traffic study's done, you may still have all the same exact points to be made.
Sure.
But at least it'd be interesting to see how those issues, which were the common sense issues that I didn't have to go very far to raise it because it was all informal. When this project was initiated over 5 years ago, the city had entered its appearance in Wilson to intervene because of the exact concern you're talking about with truck traffic and flow. And it wasn't that we were opposed to it. I mean, just to be clear, we weren't going in with a preconceived notion that we're opposed. We were going there to listen and see if that issue was going to be managed properly.
Well, that's just the truck traffic. 300 cars entering that space as well. That just all becomes like a muck. Sorry, it took a bit. Second question I had was utilities. How much of a draw will this facility take as far as power and water? Do we have capacity for water for this facility? Where does it come from? Water's everything. If you don't have water, what are you going to do? But that would be a big
I would think that would have been addressed in the engineering. I didn't look at that.
Yeah.
I figured 20 porta potties.
I don't know. You got to cool the place. It's giant. Yeah. Just questions. I would never understand why you would put this facility here, but that's just me. Anyway, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. I appreciate all of you volunteering to be on the commission. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Brett Weber, architect and resident. I live at 120 Morrison Avenue, just above the project site, actually. And I know it's late, so I'm going to be brief. I wanted to appreciate the thoughtful questions and challenges to this development. I guess one of the sort of prevailing things that was running through my mind tonight as I think about this as a resident, as a business owner here, and someone who really cares deeply about the future of the city, is the dilemma of unintended consequences. I realize we can't rewrite the zoning ordinance, but from those members of planning that I've talked to, and I do sit on the LVPC as a public member participating in the LVC regular meetings and the Lehigh Valley Transportation Study as well, that the ordinance for development on this site never really anticipated a 1 million square foot building. And so there are a host of issues that are raised here that I think even our own ordinances don't really address. But to the extent this project receives approval, however it jumps through all the hoops that it may need to, I think there's an opportunity to have a conversation with the developer about things that are impacted, the impervious cover, the roofscape, what happens with landscape, light pollution, noise pollution. There isn't necessarily a detailed regulation that really limits that for a project like this, but it will have an enormous impact. And unregulated, the light and noise from this project will become something that is a deterrent to future development for the city. And
Yep.
I think, what's interesting when you look at the aerial photograph, you look at the success story of the silk mills reclamation from an industrial site to be something that's really wonderful as a mixed use development for the city. And it's two very different things. Lastly, I would just say that one of the things that I heard repeatedly, which is a really important consideration, is PennDOT's review of this and the proposed improvements that they may demand and the developer may accommodate. I guess the question I would suggest the Planning Commission asks LVPC is, how does this push the needle forward on LVPC's argument for future expansion and development of Route 22? Because that's the unintended consequence that is the sort of train that's been moving down the tracks for a long time with a lot of pressure from various sources along Route 22 outside of the city of Easton. And this project could be one of those tipping points that pressures more of that sort of de facto development that the city could oppose, but that PennDOT has a lot of authority. So it's a consideration. It would be interesting to get LVPC to weigh in on that. How does this sort of push that pressure for redevelopment of 22 more generally? And that would have serious impacts to the city. So thank you, and thank you for all your
Yeah, if I may make just one observation, particularly when you talk about the zoning, the Easton zoning never would have contemplated a 1 million square foot warehouse within the city of Easton.
Right.
And so when you think about the meeting coming up in Wilson next week, even though you're not residents, there's definitely this is an intra municipality building. So I think you'd have a right to sit there and particularly listen, and there may be good answers. I'm not presuming anything, but they're all legitimate questions, and they have 90% of that building, which means they have all the engineering review. We have the right to look at that impact, whatever they do, which is one of the reasons I wanted to see what Wilson does. But you might want to attend if you're able to.
Yeah, and I would just, to Mr. Shipman's comments before too about LVPC in an advisory role, that is correct, but not with respect to stormwater. So stormwater, they have a very specific role and requirement, and they'll attend to that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'll keep my comments brief. Crystal Rose, 134 Spring Garden Street, and Easton City Council member. I really appreciate everyone's comments and concerns tonight, both from the commission and from the public. I think it's really important to have this kind of input. I have grave concerns regarding the safety, quality of life, pollution issues regarding this project, just for the record. The developer has already acknowledged and stated that through discussions with the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission that the 13th Street intersection is dangerous. I think this is something we all know. And I still have concerns even with the pathway that they're hoping the trucks will take, but I agree that the 13th Street intersection is going to see impact. There's going to be tractor trailers turning around in our neighborhoods. I think that Carol Einman's presentation more eloquently covers my environmental and public health concerns, so I'll leave it at that. I couldn't in good conscience support this project. I have major concerns for drivers, pedestrians, and our neighborhood residents. I agree that it's time for the developer to go back to the drawing board, update their plans, finish the PennDOT traffic studies, and get in front of the Wilson Borough Commission. So thank you for tabling this tonight. My dad grew up in this neighborhood, in the same house where my grandfather passed away on Wood Avenue. And my first family home where I lived for the first several years of my life was on Wood Avenue. So I'm very familiar with this intersection. And, you know, traffic has just gotten worse over the years. I can remember from when I'm a little kid to driving when I was 16 years old in the area to now. It's heavily impacted already, and I can't imagine what it's going to be after a project like this, if it's approved, will bring to this area. And I hate to say it, but those visiting from other parts of the Lehigh Valley will have a new landmark when they enter towards our city, and it's going to be a warehouse, something I really don't want us to be noted for. I'd like the Peace Candle, the downtown parks and things like that. A warehouse is going to really stand out when you're approaching on 22. It's really an eyesore. I'll be here for the next meeting, and I hope to have more answers like you do too. Thank you again for your comments, and thanks for your time tonight. Appreciate your volunteerism.
Thank you.
Good evening. First of all, I'm the testimony. Actually, I'm late because I was stuck at the traffic on 22 with heavy truck traffic. So my concern is...
Your name and address.
Oh, sorry.
Even though I know your name, go ahead.
Taiba Sultana, 227 Mr. Drive.
Thank you.
As a representative of the City of Easton and the mother of children attending elementary, middle, and high school, I deeply care about providing a clean and safe environment to our communities. I oppose the warehouse in Easton because it represents unchecked urban sprawl, prioritizing corporate interest over the well-being of our community. As I said before, and Ms. Suzanne, Carol, and Rose also mentioned that the proposed warehouse will bring in heavy truck traffic, noise pollution, and air pollution, further deteriorating our quality of life. It will also contribute to the destruction of natural habitat and wildlife in the area. We don't need another warehouse, honestly, because there are already many in the Lehigh Valley, but a sustainable and responsible development that truly benefit our city and its residents. Warehouse operating a highly technological warehouse, however, can cause a significant amount of energy consumption due to heating, air conditioning, and lighting, which generates substantial carbon dioxide emission. Freight trucks induce pollution and noise. Traffic safety is also a threat while people are traveling to and from warehouses and can largely impact the health of our community. Again, I understand how important it is to bring revenue, but another warehouse is not the solution. However, there are other alternatives. Decent affordable housing, duplexes, multi-family dwellings with community gardens, and recreational could be the best use of that place, which can be very helpful for economic development as well. So I believe considering different options rather than other warehouse will positively impact not only our city, but our county as a whole. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to provide input? All right, seeing none, we'll move to, we have a resolution that was proposed by the staff to grant conditional final approval. We also have the offer from the applicant to put a stop on the timeline for approximately 60 days to November 7th and give time to get some additional information, therefore tabling the issue at the moment, or any other motion that someone would like to make.
I would propose the motion that the chair just discussed, that the motion prepared by our staff be tabled until we hear again from the applicant.
We accept the offer to postpone with timelines postponed till that time, till November 6th.
Yeah, I just, as far as how you term it, I don't think we have to be dealing with the resolution, just the application for conditional final approval be continued to the meeting on November 6th. to give the applicant additional time to respond specifically to the concerns raised and to provide complete reports with respect to the PennDOT, the Wilson Borough, and anything else in response to what they've been able to hear today as to the concerns of the citizens. So it's just a matter of continuing the application,
I
period.
think if we just continue it until November 6th.
Right.
So continuation. Thanks.
I'll make the motion, we continue it until November the 6th, with the agreement of the applicant.
Thank you, Mr.
But that should be in writing, and so Carl, please make sure we get anything.
Yeah, I'll send them a waiver if you guys decide to table it. I'll send them a waiver tomorrow.
Right, thank you.
I'll second that. So second by Mr. Graziano. Any further discussion? All right, Mr. Shippen?
Yes.
Mr. Graziano?
Yes.
Mr. Heilman?
Yes.
Ms. Wagner? And I will vote yes as well. So we wish you good luck in gathering all that information, and we'll see you back in a couple months.
Can I ask you one question though? If there's any, I didn't pick up anything about air quality monitoring, but I remember in other cases I've been involved outside this area, that's the air quality issue has been an issue, and I know there's monitoring stations throughout the valley and the county. If there is any such information that you have looked at, just because the citizens raised it before and they may raise it again, you may just want to take a look so you can advise how air quality is monitored. My understanding is that DEP has various areas where they monitor it, and it may be very helpful for us to understand that issue. So I think it would be, it's just some guidance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shear. Anything else for the good of the order? Okay, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Oh, actually, no. I still have some.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
This is Carl. When we get I have two things. When we get our packets, we always get the satellite views and the overhead views. But whenever we get these right here, you can't read one word on these right here. Is there any way we can get a better, more clear printout on those?
I can try to email those to you, but they're large PDFs, and a lot of emails do not accept them.
So there's no way to really compress that down.
No, I've tried to reduce the file size, because I send these reviews over to Atlanta also, and a lot of times they get kicked back, because their servers can't even.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I mean, I know sometimes applicants will bring large.
It's all computerized now. We won't receive plans.
Okay.
But they're all on their computer through OpenGov.
It's just really tough to review it when
it is.
We're just basically looking at pictures.
Yeah, if you guys ever have any questions, you guys can come in. I can throw it up on the screen for you, and you can zoom in and everything.
All right. And the other thing too, going forward, on projects of this scale that does go before the LVPC or any other board, I think it'd be really helpful if we get that just with our packets every single time.
Sorry, get what?
Get the reviews on LVPC.
Yeah.
Anything like that goes forward, because the amount of information we got before we got some of this other stuff, it wasn't enough to make any type of informative.
Carl was the one that supplied that from Lehigh Valley Planning.
Right. Yeah, we emailed it after the initial one, correct?
But we requested it. Mr. Green and I spoke beforehand, and we made that request for the additional information.
Right. And I do have one other question, hypothetically, I should have asked before. So hypothetically, if this were to pass through Wilson next week, and it comes back here in November, and it fails, what happens then?
Well,
do they get a 930,000 square foot?
No. The fact of the matter is, no matter what happens, it would have to be totally redesigned, because you have all these issues with water flow, water management. We are still a next door community, so we would have the right to participate if the city was inclined to be pursuing that. I mean, it would be a problem for the developer. The developer's first step would be they'd have a right to appeal this to city council, actually. So one area where city council potentially has an oversight on planning, because otherwise this is a unique system where planning commission makes final decision. You also have to keep in mind that this is the project, the use itself is as of right based on the adaptive reuse section. So you can't just say we don't want a warehouse. You have to go through the step-by-step provisions of what needs to go into a plan, which is why the traffic report was so important. It's a totally legitimate thing for you to have a right to look at. If every aspect of engineering review has been provided by the developer, a just plain denial that we don't want any more warehouses, and particularly now when you weigh the 10% versus Wilson Borough all out for the warehouse, if that's what they decide, it might be very tough to sustain any, if it was challenged in court, even if City Council, sustained what the Planning Commission did. Because now you'll have to have City Council will become a court of record. There was all the testimony here. There's no stenographer. There's nothing for a court to see. So City Council would hold hearings, and there would be a record. And if City Council then said, "Well, we're denying it only because it's a warehouse and we don't want a warehouse," that's going to go up to common police court, and probably the city would lose because it's allowed in our zoning. You have to have a failure of some of the aspects that you review in a land development plan. And sometimes it's a matter of, this is where the give and take in land development plans is often, well, can you do this, can you move this over, can you shrink the building by a few thousand feet? I've been through a lot of these in the private, outside of the city of Easton, there's often give and take. Often that give and take is before you even come here with the municipality. So that's why I think it'll be so much more helpful to be thinking and considering this after we have more information, including what does this final plan look like. And it'll be really helpful for the developer to make a real presentation as to the full show of the building, where the parking is. I don't think anybody has a full grasp from what little we could see. And that would really help. And then going through that LVPC as a checklist will be a great way to see how concerns of a planning body, all of which would be legitimate considerations. LVPC recommended that they would prefer to see some other development in the site, but they did not say you can't have a warehouse here, because they know they can't say that.
We can't stop that.
Well, from a public perspective, leaving thinking that there's nothing to be done, that this is why the zoning code is so important. Because when the zoning code allows things, then things can happen, and you can't just change that. So,
I'm sorry.
So, it's incumbent upon each of us, if we think that there's some concerns that you have about certain things going on in the city, that approach council, because council ultimately decides on the zoning code. I don't say that to put the pressure on council folks who are here, but they know that too, and they want to hear from citizens, and they're here and they're hearing you. So. I appreciate all the comments that were made tonight, and I'm sure they'll be taken away by many of us and thought about.
And I'm just going to say one more thing, that the challenge for the Planning Commission and City Council, you cannot have a municipality that prohibits a use. If we had prohibited a atomic reactor in the city, somebody can put it anywhere they want, because the way law has developed, despite the bizarre nature of Pennsylvania and municipalities being 4 blocks long, you can't ban something. And the best example that we have in a real life situation is billboards. The city of Easton did not allow for billboards, even though there were 17 somehow pre-existing. And we had a big issue because of that. And the Planning Commission and the city corrected that by designating very limited zones, but the zones were there. So you have to allow warehouses. My guess is there are districts where warehouses are allowed. They're not going to be 1 million because they just can't be. And we would survive that. But we probably should be looking at adaptive reuse, because adaptive reuse zones, and correct me if I'm wrong, that was I hate to call it the garbage pit. If there was a use that no one wanted, they threw it into the adaptive reuse zone. And that's where Bushkill Drive, right, along the Bushkill Creek, is adaptive reuse, and that's where we had the issue with the propane tank that I took it up to the Commonwealth Court and the Supreme Court and lost because they preempted us from regulating, but that's why it was allowed there. And adult bookstores, if anybody had any demand for that, went into the adaptive reuse zone.
Thank you, Mr. Shields.
What's your next one last question, just to repeat so everybody here knows. The date, time, and place of the Wilson Planning Commission. That's what you're hearing us. Do we have that? Nobody?
That would be helpful.
September 9th.
Monday night at 7.
What's that?
Monday at 7.
Just next Monday night at 7.
Monday night at
September
7.
9th at 7?
Yeah.
What is it?
At 8 or 2.
Wilson.
8 or
Wilson.
And do you know exactly where? I don't know where they hold the meeting.
She just
The
said.
municipal building.
She just said.
Municipal building?
Yeah, I looked it up before. We got that.
Thank you.
Very much, I appreciate that.
Did you say 802 Hay Terrace?
Anything else for the order?
Okay.
Hearing none,
The
motion
municipal
to
building.
adjourn. Motion to adjourn.
Wilson
Second.
Municipal Building.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Thank you all for coming. Appreciate it.
That's almost tomorrow. 20408.